Okay.
All right, this is an interview at the Avala Sr. Residence, Albany, New York. It is the 27th of March, 2006, approximately 1 p.m. Interviewers are Wayne Clark and Mike Russert. Could you give me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
John Faunce, F-A-U-N-C-E, Roach, born in July of 1912.
Okay. Where were you born?
Born in Boston.
All right. What was your educational background prior to entering service?
Well, I went to Boston Latin School, which is the oldest school in the country, Harvard College, and Harvard Medical School.
You graduated the class of 32 from
39, 30, let's say I have to figure it out, 37.
37.
Okay. Now, did you enlist or were you drafted? Well, you must have enlisted in
I
30s.
entered voluntarily.
Okay. Why did you decide to enlist into the service?
Well, I expected to make my total time in the Navy as a physician.
Okay. And why did you pick the Navy?
I had Naval ROTC when I was at Harvard, and I happened to be number one guy in it. I was the battalion commander, and I liked what I saw then. And then I was in the Naval Reserve as an ensign, not medicine, but just straight for 4 years while I was in medical school. And I had cruises and things of that sort in the summertime, and I liked it. So.
Mm-hmm. Where did you go on some of your cruises?
Went to Miami, went to this big city up in Canada. And where else did I go? Went down to St. Thomas in the Caribbean. I can't think of any others.
Okay. What kind of ships did you?
I was qualified on a destroyer for OD on the way, and on battleships in port.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, when did you enter the Navy?
Halifax was the name of that
Nova
city.
Scotia.
When did you enter the Navy?
In August of 1937.
37, okay. Where was your, now, since you had been in the Navy ROTC, where did they station you when you went in?
Well, the ROTC was while I was a student
Right,
at Harvard.
yes. So you graduated, you were an ensign, correct?
An ensign, and I was in a Naval Reserve in Boston.
Okay. So you were in the Navy Reserve then in Boston.
Right.
Was that while you were in medical school?
Yes.
All right. Were you called up for World War II?
No, I entered
Oh,
a year and more than a year and a half
oh,
before
okay.
the war came.
Oh, all right. When did you enter the service?
In 1937.
All right.
Wait a minute. I have to figure this out. No, 1939 I entered.
Okay. Where were you assigned?
I was assigned to the Naval Hospital in Philadelphia.
So you were in the medical profession and you went into
Yes.
the, okay.
I spent a year at the hospital in Philadelphia.
Were you a general practitioner?
Yes.
What were your duties there? Could you
Oh,
tell us about
ordinary,
it?
ordinary medical activities, examining patients and assisting in the surgery and things of that sort.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What was your equipment like that you had? Was it pretty much up to date
Pretty much,
for the
yes.
time?
Yes, for a state. It It was in good shape. It was a fairly new hospital, and the equipment in it was pretty good.
Okay. Where were you when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor?
That's an interesting story. When I finished the year in Philadelphia, I was sent to an aircraft carrier, USS Lexington. I joined that in August of 1941, I guess. Yeah, 1941. And I was on it right up till well, I'll tell you a little bit more. The home port of the ship at that time was in Los Angeles, and about the next day I got there, the home port was changed to Pearl Harbor. And we were operating in and out with other ships for a whole year. And in December of 1941, we had come in from some maneuvers outside Pearl Harbor. We came in there for 2 weeks of minor repairs. We went in and arrived on a Sunday, and on Monday morning we were told if we didn't have a will, make it today and get it done today and get it in the mail today, which is an unusual thing to say. And I did it, and I have that. I still have that paper I wrote. And on Wednesday, we got word that they were canceling our minor repairs, and instead we were to take a deck load of Marine fighters to Midway. And there was another carrier with us, and they were to take a deck load too. We left Pearl Harbor on Friday afternoon and headed for, my memory for names is Midway.
Midway.
We arrived at Midway on Sunday morning about 6 o'clock. And as soon as we got there, the Marine fighters were warming their engines to take off to get onto the island. You never fly off a carrier until you have a good warm engine, because if you do, you go down and the ship runs over you. And while they were getting ready to take off, word came through that the Japs were attacking Pearl Harbor. And they told us to put the Marine fighters on the Midway, then go south and east. We believe that's where the Japs are. And it said, search, find, and destroy. The words which were given in the message to us, which is really humorous. Well, in any event, we went all over a large space, east and south of Midway. The Japs, of course, were north and west. And then it finally came to me. We were sent down there. We only had 2 carriers, and the Japs had about 6. If we had run into the Japs, we would have been totally destroyed. So they sent us as far as they could get us out of any problem. And we came back into Pearl Harbor on Sunday night. The attack was Sunday morning, and things were still smoking and burning. And it was dark. We came in the evening, and every now and then you could hear a rifle shot. And what was happening? The Army put out groups of people to protect, groups of soldiers to protect people, and they would shoot at anything that moved in the darkness. There were more cats and dogs lost in Honolulu that night than ever before. So then we were sent to various places to attack. We attacked many Japanese islands in the Pacific, the main one being Bougainville. And then the Japs decided that we can't do that anymore. They had, their big problem was they have no oil in Japan, and they don't to this day. And they were running tankers from Tokyo down to the islands and fill them up and bring them back, and American submarines were shooting at them. So the Japs decided they're going to have to clean that out. And how, I don't know, but we found out that that's what they were going to do. And two carriers, Yorktown and we, were sent down to the area where the Japs are running their tankers to keep it under our control. The Japs came down with several ships. Nobody on either ship saw the other ship, but the battle that took place was 100 miles apart. We sunk two Japanese carriers. My carrier was hit by 4 torpedoes, which I remember very well because it just shook everything, and many bombs. And Yorktown was hit, but not as badly. After the battle was finished, about noontime, we were told to head for San Francisco. And that city was picked because that was the only dry dock large enough to take the carrier. And we were making pretty good time. The engineering system wasn't injured. And about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, there was a huge explosion and tremendous amount of smoke up from down below. And what had happened was that the tanks that held the aviation gasoline were way down in the very bottom of the ship, well below the waterline. And then those risers bring it up to the flight deck and a hose on the end of that, just like a gasoline station to fill the aircraft. And in no time, what happened was one or more of those risers were ruptured by the torpedoes and the bands, and leaks spread out, and somewhere a spark hit it and off it went. So in about an hour it was decided that we could not control it, and we had orders to abandon the ship. We had 2 cruisers along with us and a couple of destroyers, and we had to slide into the water and get picked up by the cruisers and destroyers. The last 2 men to leave the ship before the last two ships were the admiral and the skipper, the captain, and the 2 before them were the chaplain and me. The chaplain and I we made a search of all the cabins and every place where we could see if we could find anybody. And we did find someone, got them out. Finally, the skipper decided it was time for us to go. So the chaplain and I slid down ropes into the water, and it was windy, and the ship was beginning to leave it there. And I didn't want to be underneath it when it went down, so I tried to swim away from it. And I couldn't get away. It was drifting faster than I could swim. So I swam towards the bow and went around the bow, and the ship went off. And suddenly I found myself all alone in the middle Pacific. The cruisers I could see way down there, about 1.5 miles or so. They had a hands full. The ship had 3,000 people, and about 1,000 of them were trapped in the ship, which they couldn't get out. So they were trying to, the cruisers were trying to pick up about 2,000 people. And I was all alone. I could see the cruisers about half a mile away. And there was nothing I could do but just wait and see if somebody should pick me up. And I was there about 2 hours before I was spotted. And where I spotted a little boat coming from the cruisers, and boy, did I wave my hands and yell. They came and picked me up. I was very fortunate.
I take it you had a life jacket on?
Yes, K-pop jacket, which is good for about 3 hours, and it gets logged. And it's worse than wearing nothing. So when I was getting to the end of that, so I was pretty well scared.
Where were you when the torpedo struck the ship?
I was on the cruisers.
Uh,
When they struck the
Well,
ship,
initially, when the Japanese torpedoes hit.
Right in it. I had a segment, a medical area to cover the engineering portion of the ship. Then there were 3 others for other parts of the ship, and mine was the engineering part below the water deck. And it hit outside where I was, and it just shook the whole damn place. And it kind of scared everybody, including me especially. But it didn't break through then. But we had to abandon it because leaks were occurring. And I went up to the flight deck and then down into the hangar deck and took care of patients down there and got them all set to get out and get on the cruiser. So that was my afternoon. I've never forgotten it, as you can well imagine.
Did they give much of a warning that when the ship finally did explode, the aviation fuel exploded? Did they have a warning that it just happened?
Yeah. No, they didn't know it.
Where were you when that happened?
I was up in the flight deck when that happened.
Did the whole ship shudder? Or?
Yes, it sure did. It sure did. It would just shake the ship. The torpedoes are pretty powerful things. And then the bombs chewed up the flight deck.
Did you see the ship go down?
No, I didn't see it go down. It went down after darkness. As a matter of fact, we put torpedoes in it because it wasn't, they thought it was going to sink itself, and it did sink about halfway. And then it seemed to stop. And they didn't want to leave it there because if the Japs should find it, there'd be a good bit of things in it that they would like to get. So about 7 o'clock in the evening, they sent one of the destroyers up to it and put 3 or 4 torpedoes in it, and it rolled off and went down.
Where did you go after this happened?
I was taken to an island that the French governed, and we stayed there. They took us off the carriers and kept us on the island for a couple of days until they got 2 vessels, old commercial vessels. They weren't Navy things. But they put us on those 2 and headed for San Diego. They were 2 old rat things. One was run by diesels, which were breaking down every day, and we were scared to death. We wore belts that automatically inflate if you press a button, because we were going through areas where we knew there had been Japanese submarines. And these old ships were very slow, making 5 or 6 knots. And it took us, 3 weeks to get to San Diego.
Once you reached San Diego, where were you stationed? Or did you get time off before you?
Well, let me back up
Okay,
just a
sure.
little bit. When they picked me up and got me on the cruiser, they took me down to the sick bay and put me in a shower and gave me a gallon can of mineral oil because I was covered in fuel from my head down to my waist. I still have the belt that has fuel oil stains on it. And I scrubbed all that off, and my clothes were a wreck. So when I finished, there I was naked, and I had no clothes of any sort. The dentist on the ship gave me a pair of shoes And one of the other guys gave me a pair of pants and so on and so forth. And one guy gave me $2 because I had no money at all. When we arrived in San Diego, I went to a telephone and put that nickel in the telephone and called my wife, who was on the East Coast. And I couldn't tell her anything other than I'm all right, because it had not been released yet that the Lex was sunk. Oh, there was a reporter aboard the ship beforehand, was there when it was sunk, from Chicago. He was supposed to write up some nice things about the Navy, you know. But he wrote up an main article that was canceled, or set aside, it was not published. So I called my wife, and all I could say, I'm okay, get on the train and come on out to LA and I'll meet you. She came out, she met a couple of girls on the train about her age. They got friendly. And the morning before the train was supposed to get to LA, they stopped at a station and they wanted people to get out and walk around and so on and so forth. But my wife didn't want to do it. So the other two girls went out and they walked back and forth. And when they came back, my wife was sitting there, and they came back, they had a new newspaper in their hand. And she dropped it in my wife's lap, and here, big, that high, USS Lexington sunk. So that's the first way my wife heard about it. Then I got paid, so I was in pretty good shape, and we were taken to let's see, I've forgotten what the name of the place is, but right near LA. And then they took us east. We got orders. I had orders to go to Bethesda, Maryland, to the Naval Hospital there. And I went there by train. And then my wife came down. We had an apartment in Baltimore, and we were there for 3 years.
What was your assignment there? What were your duties there?
I had 2 years of instruction in radiology and 1 year in doing it. And then they sent me up to a place just outside Boston, a hospital in Chelsea, Massachusetts, in radiology. And I worked there for 3 years. And now the war was all over by this time. Mm-hmm. And Johns Hopkins in Buffalo wanted me to come back down there, and I wanted to go. But since I was not reserve, I was regular Navy, they wouldn't accept my resignation. And I made several trips to Washington, always on a Friday, trying to get somebody down there to help me, so I could get out, because I was very anxious to go back to Baltimore. And I got the runaround every single time. They gave me a lot of nonsense. I came back one Friday night, and the following morning, I was in the hospital in Chelsea, and I was examining a Marine major who was badly injured. And I had done work on him before, so he knew me. And in the middle of it, he said something like, "Doc, what's the matter with you? You look mad." And I said, "Well, yes, I am." And he said, "What are you mad about?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to resign from the Navy, and they won't accept it." He said, "You want to get out of the Navy?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'll get you out." I said, "Oh, thanks, go ahead." And I thought, he was just full of nonsense. On Thursday, my orders arrived, accepting my resignation. So
Now, what was your rank at that time?
I was a commander. Mm-hmm. I went up to the Marine, and I said, "Look what I got." He said, "Yeah, I know." I said, "What do you mean you know?" He said, "I told you I'd get you out." I said, "How did you do it?" He said, I grew up in Gardner, Massachusetts, little town in western Massachusetts. And my best friend there, we went from kindergarten all the way up, a fellow named Joe Martin. And he said, I called his office. Now, Joe Martin was the Speaker of the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. The number 3 man. President, if he dies, Vice President takes over. If he's shot, then the Speaker of the House takes over. So this Marine said, I just called his office, and we chatted a little while, and he said, I told him about it. And I'm sure what Martin did, he just said to one of his girls, call you, go over there and tell him to do it. And I already knew that anybody in the service wanted to be in good standing with people like Joe Martin. They'd do anything in the world for him. And that's how I got out.
Now, when did you get out? When was
1947.
Okay.
I went back to Hopkins. Stayed 3 years there. And then came to Albany.
Okay. Do you remember where you were and your reaction when you heard about the death of President Roosevelt?
No, I don't know.
I was just curious. I was curious if you, some that we interviewed affected them more than others. I didn't know if.
I don't remember. His wife was a patient of mine.
Oh, she was?
Yeah, she had injured her knee. She fell on her knee. And then I saw an interesting thing of the president. The hospital in Bethesda was brand new. And the president came out to christen it. It was a small affair because this was early in the war, and it was not wide open. The business took place on the steps of the front of the hospital. And there were only about probably 35 or 40 people in the thing waiting for him to arrive. And finally a car came, and there was a big semicircular drive, and it drove up to our place where we were standing. And there was Roosevelt in the back seat. And a couple of guys were with him, and there was an open car. The trunk was down, the sides were down. They picked him up, and when they picked him up, his face was terrible. He was in pain. It was awful for him. They carried him out of the car and set him down in his chair next to the postal. And when it was his turn to speak, the 2 guys got up again, picked him up, carried him around, put him in the back of the speaker stand, and pushed his legs in, and then a big smile came over his face. And my friends, a total different person, but I never had seen anything that showed how badly injured he was by polio. He was suffering constantly from it. And I never did like him very much, but I had to admire him for his ability to do that.
Yeah, at the time, very few people really knew that he was suffering.
Yeah, they never
Like
took
that.
pictures. Oh yeah, the movie group to take pictures of the thing, and when he arrived, they stopped and didn't start again until he got up and hanging onto the podium. And as soon as he got there and he said, "My friends," then they start to have the cameras going.
Do you recall where you were when the atomic bombs were dropped on Japan, and any reaction to that, or?
Well, yes and no. It ended the war. And I knew, because of my work in radiology, that there was a lot of radioactive material deposited by the bomb, and it wouldn't be safe to live in for I don't know how long, till it degenerated to a clear point. And I knew a lot of people would be killed in it, and it because it had a tremendous sized area that was destroyed by that. And it would have been nicer if they could have done it without that kind of a big bomb, but I guess Truman was the one who decided to go ahead with that, and it did stop things.
After you left the service, did you ever use the GI Bill at all for further education or
No,
home or anything like that? Or
no,
no? I know you probably didn't use the 5220 club then.
no.
Okay. You went right to work at John Hopkins then, right after
Yes.
you were discharged?
Yeah.
Did you join a veterans organization?
No. I thought of joining here, but I haven't done so.
Have you stayed in contact with anyone you were in the service with?
Most of the people who were in the service of my time have gone to their heavenly reward. There aren't many available.
Did you stay in contact with anyone right after you left the service? Did you have any friends that you stayed in contact with that were in the service with you?
No.
At least when you got out, okay.
No, the only one that was friendly with me when I was in the service in medicine was Herman Hillebo, who was the Commissioner of Health here. He was in the public health hospital in Bethesda, right across the street from the Navy hospital. He was interested in tuberculosis control, and I was interested in tuberculosis radiology. And I got to know her quite well for a long time. And I had been getting offers from other medical schools while I was at Hopkins. Hopkins is a great training center, and it's a place where doctors want to get on the staff if they possibly can. And they make a good reservoir for other people. And while I was there, I got offered Columbia University in New York. Was a very nice spot, but I had a brand new baby, and when you have to go to school, and you have to go out to New Jersey to go to school, and Washington Bridge, it's very easy. It only takes 2 minutes to get over there. I turned that one down, and two others in New York City wanted me to come there. Two medical schools from the South wanted me to come. And one day, as a matter of fact, I almost did go down south. I was down there for a 2-day visit, and what I saw on day one I liked very much. But I didn't see the dean on day one. And the next day I saw the dean, and I didn't like him. I didn't feel confident that what he was telling me was the total truth of it all, and what wonderful things we're going to do, and so on. So I turned that down. It would have been a nice job. And one day Herm Hillebo called me from when I was at Hopkins and said, there's a wonderful operation up here that you ought to come up and look at in the Albany Medical Center. So I came up and looked and liked what I saw. And I spent 2 days looking at it and decided to come. So I came here in November of 1950 and spent the next 35 years at Albany.
Okay, how do you think your time in the service changed or had an effect on your life?
No, I don't think it really.
You don't think?
I don't think it really would. I would have gone into radiology because I liked physics very much, and I did well in physics in college. One of the reasons I got into medical school, and I would have gone on into radiology regardless of what happened in the service, and whether I would come here or not. I might have no knowledge, but I would be in some place like that. service it didn't really have much effect on what my future was.
Do you think about what happened on the Lexington much, or?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I know, you don't forget that. I lost a lot of good friends.
You came close to being lost yourself too, didn't you?
What?
You came close to being lost yourself.
Yes, I was. Let me tell you a little story. Before the battle, we were sunk.
Now, that was Coral Sea, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
We were attacking islands here and there all over the place. There was a big one that we went down to attack on. The system was you would stay a reasonable distance away from the attack place. The distance it takes you to run from daylight disappearing and darkness coming to get to the attack, get to the place to be attacked, and arrive there just as the daylight is coming on. So we were heading down for Bougainville, and I turned in about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, just about got to sleep when a knock came on the door, and there was a corpsman, hospital corpsman, and said there's a young sailor down the sick bay was got a pain in his abdomen, and it's severe and so on. And he said, we think he has appendicitis. And he said, would you look at him? So I went down, and of course I would. I went down, and surely he was an acute appendix. Now, I didn't want to try to operate on him while we were making an attack on Bougainville. So I gave him some morphine, and he felt great, as it does. I went back up to my bed and expected to go down in the morning, because we'd get there to just to daylight, then head north as fast as could be. But they called me again about 4 o'clock in the morning that the morphine had worn off and he was in terrible shape. So I went down again. And he needed to be operated right away. So I called my boss. We had 4 physicians on the ship. The senior one was a surgeon. I called him and he came down and he said, what are we going to do about this attack business? I said, he needs to be operated. Let's do him. So we did him. And in the middle of the operation, suddenly our anti-aircraft guns were firing. We knew we were under attack. And there we were with an open afterward. And the attack on us lasted about 15 or 20 minutes. And it was obviously from planes from the target area who spotted us and attacked the place and were dropping bombs on us, and they didn't hit us, fortunately. And then we turned around and headed north, and we completed the operation as soon as the firing was off. And that evening, I went into the wardroom. Wardroom's sort of like the living room on a ship. And there was one guy there getting a cup of coffee, which I was going to do. And his name was Butch O'Hare. His right name was Edward, but he was always called Butch. He was a fighter pilot. And I said, Butch, what'd you do today when they attacked us? He said, oh, I flew around a little bit. Did you do any great? And he said, no, just the usual. And that's fine. The following morning at breakfast, the wardroom was, everybody was patting him on the back and so on. We were attacked by 5 large bombers from Japanese from Bougainville. He shot down 4 of them. Only one of them got through. That was the one that we were shooting at, the one who dropped bombs. So the the reporter, which is on ship, sent a message to Chicago, which he shouldn't have done, about this thing, but told them to keep quiet about it, and they did, except a leak got out, and the president heard about it. So he called Butch to Washington, gave him a Medal of Honor, and then he went around and talked at schools and places, urging people to buy war bonds, which he hated. He hated doing it, but he had to do it. But he finally got out of it and got back to a carrion, and he was interested in night fighting and developing a system for night fighting, because his was just hit or miss. It hadn't been done before. It's a dangerous thing to do. And he made several trips at night off the Japanese area, and things went along very well. It was improving. But he went out one night and he never came back. Whether he was shot down or whether he was shot down by the Japanese or by our own flight, nobody knows. But about that time, they were building a new airport in Chicago. There are two main buildings that come together. There's a circular area in there with a little restaurant over there, and right across there's a big glass compartment with Butch O'Hare's picture in it and a description of it. It wasn't in there as Butch, it was in his name. And that's how O'Hare got his name.
Okay.
And you actually know him.
Yeah, oh yes, I know him very well. He's a good friend. One thing I didn't know that I only learned this past year, his father was a lawyer. He was known in Chicago as Slippery Eddie. He was the lawyer for Al Capone. And he got him out of squeezes many times. That's why the Easy Eddie. He never told his family what he was doing. Nobody knew about it. He got anxious about it. He thought he wasn't doing the right thing. And he finally decided he wanted to get away from Al Capone. And Capone said, no, you don't go, you stay. And he kept pestering Capone, and finally Capone, I think, decided he couldn't trust him. So he said, okay, you can go. And they signed off, shook hands and off, and a week later, Slippery Eddie was walking along the sidewalk near his home, and a car stopped and the window opened and machine gun and killed him. So it's quite a story.
Yeah.
Quite a story.
Okay, well, did you ever get to see any USO shows or meet any stars that came into the hospitals while you were there?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I was too busy most of the time.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, thank you very much for your interview, Doctor.
Okay?